This video is about the Savage Industries Apron and how I fill it out. A bit of a review, a bit of a kind of like description of what I use it for and what I put in it for woodworking. So I got this apron about 2 years ago. Seems to have been a few iterations since the time that I bought this one. Particularly, they've added some rivets to some of the leather patches. I think that's a great improvement. I actually had some trouble with this. I'll detail that later. I won't be covering the dimensions of the apron, so you can go to the website for that. I'll have it in the description. Everything that I'm going to be mentioning today, I'll try to get an Amazon link or some kind of link. None of them will be affiliate. I'm not interested in like trying to sell you something, just kind of showing you stuff and seeing if you find it cool too. The apron itself is mostly this heavy canvas material, and then these kind of like seatbelty straps, and then some leather accents here and there for the pockets and for the hammer loops. The webbing on this is pretty comfortable. It crosses over at the back and then ties with one buckle. I find it pretty easy to get the tightness I want, the height I want, and then just kind of like leave it there. It doesn't really lose its setting very much. I like wearing an apron for mostly clothes protection. There's a little bit of an element of like PPE where you're less likely to hurt yourself with some kind of extra canvas on it, but it's mostly for protecting my clothes. When I have this on, I don't have to care about glue or some kind of stain or anything, and I pay no attention whatsoever to this apron, so it's gotten pretty beat up because of it. Starting from the top to the bottom, there's the first pocket is this pen balcony or whatever you want to call it. This is the most useful pocket, at least for me. I really like using it. It's really out of the way, and it's nice that there's so many different partitions. So I'll start by going through all the different things I keep in here. So the first thing I'll bring up is a small thin pen. So this is just like the thinnest pen style thing that I could find. It's useful sometimes for like very thin marks that I want to do on some material that for some reason pencils don't work. I don't use it too much, but it's nice to have. Second thing, and I use this one a lot, is a kind of like a Sharpie marker. I used to use the Milwaukee one, but this Sharpie thing has recently been added to the pocket, and it's better for marking 3D prints. It actually stays on the PLA. And then I find the tip a little nicer. It's a little more pointy. It gives me a sharper line. So I use this for so many things. If I want to mark out a template, if I want to make like big thick marks, anything like that, this is a great thing to have. All right, moving on to pencils. So the first pencil I have is a 0.7. I really like the 0.7 because it's tough enough that it doesn't break super often, but it's small enough that it fits in the hole and rulers and stuff like that. This one in particular has a sheath going on the lead, so it's extra good at not breaking. And it's nice to have a pencil, obviously, for all the kind of like marking needs, especially when I need something a little bit more precise. I'll tend to use this one, and I just slide it in. I don't even hide the lead. The other pencil I have is this 2mm thick lead pencil, so that's about the size of a pencil, like a wooden pencil, but I don't have to sharpen it. So I really like having this also be mechanical. The leads are a little hard to find, but they last forever. I like having this option for kind of like thicker, less precise marks, and then it just never breaks. So I use this if I'm sanding a board or that kind of thing. So this is kind of similar to a Pica pencil. I actually have one. I didn't like how bulky the whole package was in the case. Because of that, I kind of keep it in the shelf. And actually I put a white lead in it, and I use it for walnut, but it's kind of occasional, so I don't keep it in the apron. Next thing is this marking knife. So it took me a while to actually find something that had the couple specs that I was really looking for. So the most important thing to me was to have it double-sided. I really didn't want to have to be kind of like shifting my position to mark something. And the second thing is I wanted to come it with a case. Because it's on me, I didn't want it to be just a bare blade because it's hard to store. So this one from Lake Erie Toolworks is nice because it has both of those attributes. It's also quite flat, which makes it really nice for marking kind of along a surface, so that makes it possible. And I use the marking knife for many things, but I tend to use pencil in general because I'm using like machines most of the time. But sometimes it's nice to have a marking line if I want to have like a repeatable mark or some kind of thing like that. Next up is this X-Acto knife by Olfa. So this is, again, it's a very simple tool, obviously, but this one is extra simple. It's literally just a bent piece of metal, a blade that goes in and out. There's no lock, there's no nothing. It's nice to have a beater blade sometimes, and the fact that it's so thin and sharp is really useful for some tasks, so like cutting tape, I guess like cutting things. This one comes with again, going back to the simple construction, has this clip at the back that you can use to break off the blades. So it's really a tight package, and it's super light and easy to carry around. I'm also usually carrying a Swiss Army knife in my pocket. So the kind of like bigger blade tasks, I could just use that for. Next up is the thing I use the most out of here, and it's this small ruler. So this is made by Chinois. It has some a conversion table at the back that I don't really use, but I probably should use more. It's in metric, 15 centimeters, about 6 inches. I like this thing so much that I keep a couple in storage just in case. It's so useful to just take quick measurements, obviously, but then I use it to take squeeze out when I'm doing glue ups, or rubbing the side of a board to remove the kind of like loose little bits. It's always nice to have a little kind of like sharp little metal thing. The new model of this has a bend, pre-bent kind of end to it, so you can pick it up from a table. I found that I could just use pliers to bend this previous generation, so all the ones that I have in storage are now bent. For measuring, I also have these really small calipers, again from Chinois. These things are especially useful for measuring the thickness of materials. I find like sometimes it's important for like a router setting or something like that. So I like to have that option. It's got a very small range. It's only 7 centimeters, so like almost 3 inches. But it's just nice to have that option. And then the fact that it's a kind of like a mechanical only scale makes it very durable in a workshop environment where there's a lot of dust. I wouldn't want an electronic caliper that's exposed to all of it up here. This model is actually imported from Japan on eBay. The first time I tried to buy it, well, now I know I got scammed because it was a fake. So just be a little careful. If the price is too good to be true, it probably is. And the difference between the old one and this one is night and day. Like the other one was super scratchy, just like didn't measure very well, and it would just bend in my pocket. So that was awful, and I wouldn't recommend trying to cheap out on that. But yeah, moving on to this plastic scraper. So whenever I have to scrape something and I don't want to damage a surface underneath, this is what I'll go for. I don't use it too much, but it's nice to have this option for prying or whatever. So this thing has 2 sides, a little bit of a flatter, and then one that's a lot stronger on the other side. So whatever. So this comes in handy occasionally, so I keep it up here. Next up is this scratch awl. So this one has a cap also to protect it and protect me. This is nice for obviously scratching on things. I don't use that super often. I've used it on aluminum before. I use this mostly to dent the center of a hole that I want to drill with a brad point or a Forstner bit. So it's nice to have, but I don't use it too much. It's kind of the end of the pocket there. All right, so moving down on the apron, we have these 2 belly pockets, is what I call them. So these are kind of like really big and oversized, but they have kind of like a small hole, so it's a little difficult to really fill them out. And they also have corners that get sawdust caught, but I mean, it's not too bad, but it's a bit of an annoyance. On the left side, I have this combo square. So this one's from Bridge City. It does not have a level because I didn't want a level in the combo square. And it was kind of difficult to find. This is the same 150 centimeter or 15 centimeter 6-inch dimension as the ruler is. But yeah, it's a combo square. It's useful for like measuring things or making kind of like a quick check whether something's square. I use this pretty often also to set a line parallel to another. So I'll use my pencil and kind of like go down the side of something. This model in particular is pretty well made. The ruler is nice and thick, but it did come bent the first time I ordered. So I asked I talked to support at Bridge City. They replaced it. The replacement was a little bent, but I decided it wasn't worth it, so I just kept this one. And then if I had to nitpick also, the knurling on the locking knob is a little weak, and sometimes it's hard to actually lock it properly. So I like it, I like it, but with those caveats. In the right side pocket, I keep my measuring tapes. So the measuring tape I use the most is this metric one. So I think it's about 2 meters, nothing special. It used to have the ability to do an internal measurement with a window on top, but I had to fix it at some point and I just couldn't get it to work anymore, so I taped it up so I don't forget. I also keep a imperial measurement tape in here. So this is the Stanley kind of like retro model. I like this one. It's again very simple. It's a little heavier because it's made of metal, but it's the same kind of like range of length that I don't need much more for furniture. And it's nice to have inches, especially in the US. Here we have a lot of our sheet goods come in inch measurements, and so it's just nice to have a reference for feet, especially. All right, so going down the apron, I have these two thigh pockets. So these are kind of like really big and oversized. I actually find it difficult to find something that'll like something big enough that will like justify the size of them. And then when I put multiple things in them, they ended up kind of falling to the bottom and being a mess. So I find it a little difficult to use these pockets. They also catch a lot of sawdust just because they're like below the waist. So all the sawdust ends up in there. So I'm doing my best here. So on the left side, I have this eraser. Obviously this eraser, I can use it to erase marks that I'm making with the pencils, but I also use it if I'm sanding and the sandpaper kind of like needs a little breath of fresh air. It doesn't last too long, but it helps a little bit, so I'll just wipe it down. On the other side, I keep some sandpaper. So I'm currently actually using two different types. So these are both 120 grit, but I have this backside sandpaper from the Wood Whisperer. That is really nice for precise, kind of like getting into corners and stuff. So I actually quite like this, and it's very durable. But then otherwise I use this sponge sandpaper. So this is a lot better for kind of like evening out the pressure from my fingers or going around like rounded surfaces. So I tend to use this as like a finish sanding, whereas this one is a little bit more to like break an edge and that kind of thing. So moving on to the front of those thigh pockets. So they both have this pen slot. And then I did have trouble using it for kind of like pen style things because if it sticks out at all, it just kind of keeps getting caught on things, and just the position that it's at again near the waist is a little difficult to use. So I ended up with shorter things in them. So the first of which are these Klein scissors. So these are very simple scissors, just like two pieces and a screw. It's nice to have scissors sometimes to cut, whether it's tape or some veneer, or I get to use enough use out of these scissors that they're worth keeping around, and they slot in there nicely. And then on the other side, I have these tweezers. So obviously working with wood a lot, I tend to get splinters. And so these are nice to be able to pull things out. I was having trouble getting these tweezers in and out of that little slot. So I put some tape on the end, and now they're easy to pull out. All right, and then finally on the sides, this apron has two little like hammer loop things. On the model I received, they're placed in different places and they're slightly different size. I'm not sure if that's on purpose. The position on the hips is a little difficult to use. So when I had a heavier hammer in here, it would kind of flop around a lot. So I ended up using this H&T Gordon plane setting mallet. So this is actually obviously meant to set planes, but I like it for just, hammering on things, just generally. Like the fact that it's wood is really nice because I can hit a variety of materials without really damaging them too much or at all. So it's also, it's light, like I said, so that's good with this apron. And then it's small enough that I can use it to adjust planes, but also it's big enough to do some damage if I need to. All right, and then last thing for the apron. So as you might have noticed, it has the split at the middle, at the bottom for the legs. That was one of the selling points, and that is actually quite nice to go to the bathroom or that kind of thing. I don't have to take it off. It does cause a little bit of trouble just because at I have to clip it at the back, and for me, if I tighten down the leg straps, when I lift my hands, it kind of catches, so I leave them loose, but that means that when I bend down or I crouch or whatever, the kind of legs are floppy and they go everywhere, and then sometimes they fall in the middle, and legs are give and take. If I'm standing, I really like it. And going back to these thigh pockets, I actually had trouble when I first initially received the apron. The stitching on the corner of one of these was actually falling apart and starting to get loose. So I just kind of hand stitched it. It's kind of chunky leather, so it's not that complicated, but the rivets that are in the new model at the corners, I think would be really helpful to prevent that kind of thing and to make it more durable over time. I haven't had it happen again, so I guess 1 out of 4 stitches failed and all of them had survived this last 2 years, so I don't think it's that big of an issue, but I did have to do that. The other thing with these pockets is that you have to be careful to not put anything that's kind of sharp at all, because I made that mistake a couple times and I've had to glue the bottom of them back together. I will say also over time I've started to kind of use aprons in general, this one, but aprons in general a little less. I find, if I'm doing like a quick thing here and there, it's not really worth putting the apron on, just because it's like a whole thing. So I tend to just like leave it hanging and then kind of pick things off, which is not really the intended use, but I've kind of fallen into that pattern a little bit. So yeah, that's the rundown of the apron and how I use it. In general, I quite like it, and I hope to kind of like use it for many more years to come. So I appreciate you watching, and see you next time.